Alright, Connor, let's take a look at your paper. MLA format, you're missing last name and page number in the top right hand corner. Uh, Everything here is okay until you get to here. This should be the class, and then the date is the wrong format. Really love the title, which may or may not really go with your paper, but we'll get to that in a second. So you start with your quote. This is the incorrect citation for an anthology. It'll be Defoe's last name and then possibly the page number afterwards. Remember, when you have a statement like this, the period was going to go at the end of that citation. So first things first, you can't use you in your paper. That's changing point of view, and every time you do, you miss a point. So your voice score is not going to be that great. So, and again, and then you don't mention your paper as part of your paper. So you'd want to change that as well. So whenever you see a number through 11, you have to spell it out too. The time is okay, that's fine. But whenever you 5 days a week and 5 page, which you're going to get rid of this anyway, but you need to make sure that it's spelled out. The other thing too, speaking of pronouns, everyone always says high school sucks, and I hate it here, and they're right. So just put it in your voice. You don't have to say everyone says this. But there's more to it than you would think. Again, you gotta get rid of you. Here is the main problem with the rest of the introduction. You're supposed to have a theme for it, like your theme for this paper. So you have a quote that is going to lead into a theme about high school, which all basically we're saying is just every movie genre you can think of, which doesn't relate to your quote, because really your quote is about seeing a pit with 400 people in it. So I guess you could say that high school is full of dead people. I don't know where you're going to go with a quote as related to a theme. And then you still need to talk about your main points, which I guess some of this is probably what you're going to include in your paper, but you need to talk about main points, as well as you still need a strong thesis statement here at the end, which is the message of high school. You just say, I'm going to take you through and talk about that. And again, when you have that strong message, you have that strong theme, you know what your main points are going to be. Because I have a feeling that your whole paper is just going to be, this is what my high school experience was like, which you're supposed to learn something from high school. So all of these main points are supposed to be you learning something about high school. So we'll see as we get going if you actually learn something. But yeah, quite a few things left to do in the introduction. So as I thought, your first paragraph, your first body paragraph, is just, it sucked. Well, not even that. It's not even a theme because your friends don't suck. So a couple things you use very, I think 3 or 4 times in this paragraph. So really go back and look at how you're using very in here. You have a really good voice, Connor, which I don't think you've ever had a problem with, but you really have a really good narrative voice. And again, though, this is a reflection, so you are doing some reflection back on it, but you basically spend like the first half of this paper not even getting to a main point, because your main point eventually that you get to is that there is a hierarchy, a very distinct hierarchy, where freshmen suck and seniors, have all this stuff, which is fine, and I actually think that could be entirely its own paragraph. But then you get into friendships, which you're not specific at all, just that they began to bloom and you hung out on the weekend. I don't know what you did, but you just hung out. So that seems inconsequential as well. And then you talk about academy, and the amount of time that you spend talking about academy, you really have an axe to grind with academy. And I will, for the record, and I've said this before, academy was a great idea that was poorly executed. So anyways, couple of things as well in this is you have to look at some punctuation concepts as well, especially down here. What kind of class objective in a high school is it to find my true color? Question mark. And then here, this is a run-on sentence, so you have to fix that. And again, this is pretty funny down here. Like, why would I ever need to use this? Like I said, if you wanted to make Academy its own little paragraph, that might be fine too. But um, definitely need to go back through and look at organizing these body paragraphs a little bit better. All right, so sophomore year, and this is why you probably need to reorganize. Basically, it's not worth even bringing up. But here we go. So why even write a paragraph where it's not essential to the story? Because all this is basically here are three of my friends, which you tried to cover in the last paragraph. So you got to organize this a little bit better, Connor, because this paper is supposed to teach me about something that you learned in high school. And I easily think, Connor, if you wanted to rearrange this paper, I would just rearrange it by friend. Like your high school experience taught you about friends and essentially which ones will stick and which ones won't, and then talk about some of these experiences with your friends. And you could bring up the story of Chase and you and Mr. Lord's class is fine, and that could be its own paragraph. But basically, Max is your mom, and he's sensible, and you love Brevin, and that's it. So there's not a whole lot being said here other than the Chase story and biology. So you got to organize this paper. Um, over and to make it work a little bit better. Things like nonetheless have to be separated by commas, so you got to fix that. Basically, comma, the whole time we are in the class. Basically, comma, the whole time we were in class we just talked. I don't know. You got to fix up some of these statements. All right, junior year, and probably your main reason you need to organize is just the idea of um, such the wild like tone shifts because you know, the idea that we go to fast food as a topic. I'm not exactly sure what fast food taught you other than, you know, to not be obese. I'm not sure. So we have some space issues, spell out numbers issues. You have run-on sentence here that you need to fix and go through. This is a really funny part. You know, frenzy of crunch wraps, Big Macs, and Chinese food. And then if that pond was full of those things, that's a pretty funny line, Connor. So you have dialogue, which is good. You try the more like a bag full of different groceries at this point. Thanks for attempting figures of speech, but I don't really think that's the best figure of speech in the world. I'm not sure how that the once compact unit is now a bag full of groceries. I mean, I don't know how that works. Anyway, you might want to think about a different way to say that. But I will continue to go back to this is just, hey, during my junior year, I went out to eat and our friends kind of shifted, but you're not clear about why they shifted or how they shifted, other than you had differences of opinion. So you might want to be specific with why that shift is happening. All right, so then we get to senior year. Again, it's just a hodgepodge of different things, things that you're not even willing to talk about. Um, you know, you did talk about Hannah, which again, how does it build into this theme that you don't have? Um, you've named your squad, which is intriguing, and then you talk about again some things that are behind the back mudslinging with your friends, but then later on you're like, well, my core group of friends is fine, so I don't know what that means, and I don't know. It's just a lot of random thoughts in this paper, and I love your voice. I love that you're trying to be funny, um, and I think you could probably rearrange this paper much better into more specific organizational pattern as you work your way through this, but it's just not there yet. I've gotten so fed up with first of all freshmen. Things like this. Just clean up your sentence structure. Like I don't think you need that, or put it towards the front of the sentence. First of all, I've gotten so fed up with freshmen who know how to what's that walk on. So, anyways, go through there and uh, even be specific. I mean, you talked about biology. I don't care that you insult English 12 if it's one of those classes, but be specific about what is really bothering you, because I think if you could be more specific, not with everything, but with some of the things, and build on these topics that really did alter your perception of high school, because I mean, your tone is obviously um, specific. Your pathetic run through school. Um, is it pathetic because school is pathetic, or is it pathetic because you don't, it's your fault? Um, is it pathetic? The idea that have got senioritis, and um, I don't know. That's what I'm still trying to get out of you, Connor. And I mean, obviously, you have tons of potential to be a great writer, uh, but we just need to organize this paper a little bit better. Uh, all right. Never say in conclusion for your conclusion. Now, ironically, your conclusion actually seems like a much better paper than your actual paper. Um, so, again, no, no, don't say in conclusion. Don't say I think. I know you think all this. This is where it gets interesting. School for me has actually been a positive overall experience. Really? Because you spent most of your paper talking about how terrible it was. And that's why I'm going back to you need to really think about what your tone is going to be. Um, I've made great friendships and learned which you never talk about in your paper. And then you go on to talk about things that you never talked about. All of these things that probably would make up a much better paper and a much more honest paper out of you, probably. So it's this kind of stuff that I'm like, what? So you just basically gave me the fluff. I mean, basically, I spent the last 12 minutes, grading the fluff parts of your high school career when this is actually what your high school career was all about, you know. And again, you're addressing the reader, addressing me directly, which is fine. But and then you go on to apologize to these people and shout out to these people, but it means nothing when you didn't even talk about most of these people in your paper. So. Um, while I get why you did it, it doesn't make a strong paper when you do things like that. Works cited page. This is where I told you Defoe will be the actually what you put in there, which is actually fine. You missed the print. Should be a print right there. And then make sure you left justify everything. Don't center justify it as well. Lots of potential, Connor, which I think is probably just a big old message about your whole life. You have lots of potential with this paper. It could really turn into something special if you chose to rewrite it, and I certainly hope you do. So, thanks.